Yeah, I wish I had a net right now. That is a good fish. Ooh, stay out of that tree, man. Stay out of that tree. Yeah, he's a good fish. I'm in a spot kind of close to the interstate, so it's probably pretty loud. I've never fished down here before, but it's not a super easy spot to get to. I wanted to just come down for a little bit and play with this new rod. I don't know how it's gonna do. I was casting a practice plug around in the yard, and it really seems like it's gonna be nice. This did a significantly better job of flick casting than my Trout 1 did, which is the rod that I would normally have this reel on. Not expecting to see too much in this current. This rod is very effortless to cast, and it pairs really well with this Calcutta. Calcutta has not been my favorite reel, and mostly because it doesn't do well with glass rods. Most of the time you'll see these reels on like a great hunting Huntsman, and the Huntsman, if you're not familiar with them, is a carbon rod. It is 1% glass, but it's basically a carbon rod. It behaves more like glass. It's a slower return when you load it up and flick it, and this one is very similar. This is a lot like my Shimano Trout 1 or something like that Huntsman. It's a carbon rod, but it's a slower reacting rod, and that lends itself to being able to flick cast. I know I said in that first video you want a glass rod, and I think they're more forgiving under any circumstance, but if you get a carbon rod that's specifically built for mountain stream fishing, then you're gonna wind up with a rod with a slower rebound that will be okay. So, you know, when I was saying carbon, what I meant was like something like a, you know, like the Phoenix or like a Dobbins BFS rod, where they're not really meant for stream fishing. They have like full long handles. They're really meant, you know, for bass fishing, on open water, that type of stuff. But what I've noticed is, you know, I didn't like the Calcutta when I first got it. I didn't think it was very good for casting light lures at all. And what I have figured out after having it a while is these dynamic brakes that the Calcutta has, they really lend themselves to a carbon rod. Now, although a carbon rod that's made for flick casting, stream fishing, that type of application, even though it does have kind of a slower return than you would see on a normal, you know, bass fishing rod, it still is snappier than glass. And there's something about that little extra snap that you get out of a carbon rod that pairs really well with the dynamic brakes on this Calcutta. And I've tried it every which way. I've got a few different rods and reels, and I've mixed and matched them all, and it seems like the Calcutta on a carbon rod is definitely a winner. That's why I think you see them paired with a Huntsman, because a Huntsman is just a perfect rod for how the Calcutta behaves. And I'm finding that this one is very similar. It feels a lot like a 5.3 Huntsman. That's how my Trout 1 is, but this one loads better. It's hard to describe that. It loads and it stays loaded. Like I said, it's really hard to describe what that means, but when you load this thing up, it hangs out there a little bit longer than my Trout 1 does, than a Huntsman does. It really seems like it's a purpose-built rod for flick casting, even though it is carbon. And so I put this Calcutta on it and played with it yesterday, and man, this is a very nice combo. You can just really wind up and zing it, or you can do nice easy pitches like that, and it really does everything well. The only thing negative I can say about it, and this really annoyed me, is I bought this rod because it was being marketed as a rod that could cast a 32nd ounce lure. Now, I didn't believe that. That's ridiculous. If you see that, I don't think you should believe it either on any rod that's marketed as a rod for flick casting. But I figure if it's marketed to flick cast a lure that is 0.7 grams, surely it will be able to handle 1.5 grams. And I have a lot of spoons around that 1.5 to 2 gram mark that I don't really use anymore, since I've gotten a little better handle on the whole bait finesse technique, because your serious accuracy. What the hell is that? Is that a fish caught on something? He's not caught on anything. He is just having a really bad day. I don't know what's going on with that guy. But yeah, when it comes to serious accuracy, those 1.5 lures, even if you can manage to get the rod loaded up with it and get it to cast it, that's not the ticket. You want a heavier weight. You want it slower. You want it more predictable. Or else you're not going to be able to make those super precise casts while keeping it, almost totally flat. Well, he's right side up at least. Maybe he got hit really hard by something before we got here. Anyway, I'm rambling, but the short version of that is, when I was able to start using this stuff more as it was intended to be used and started casting more accurately with it, I found that those little spoons that I had originally started with really weren't the best thing to be casting. So, they're in a box with some of my other 1.5, 2 gram things that I really like, but am probably not going to use on my bait finesse setup. And I was hoping to be able to find a blank that could load up effectively with those lighter lures, and then build a rod and probably pair it with my Flight Feather Cormorant and have a extremely ultralight stream setup that I can come out and flick cast some of these spoons with. So that's why I bought this rod, because it was marketed like that. I thought that would be a cool project. Oh, that's a bed. That's a chunky fish too. Look, it's kind of rude to fish him on a bed, but I mean, he's big. This thing got tagged a couple times, but nothing bit it. It does have some pretty big hooks on it. I believe that's a number 4. I mean, this is a chunky jerk bait for an ultralight lure. It's a Megabass X80 Junior. I believe that these are like 65 millimeters, but good profile, awesome action. The big X80 has a really good action too. I've got a very gold X80, the full size one that I keep in my bigger trout box, and I really like the action on it. So I was excited when I saw that there's a Junior that was right around, I think it's like 5.5 grams. It's really right in the sweet spot for this kind of fishing. I took this thing out the other day and played with it. This thing is just non-stop action when there's fish around. This is just kind of a play day today. I'm playing with a lot of things I haven't used much. This is a Geecrack Supaku, I believe it's called, swimmer. Man, I took this thing out the other day and played with it for a little bit. It just seems to get tons of attention. The action is awesome. It does this cool little slithery darting thing, and then when you stop it, sometimes it'll just roll a little and slowly drift up. I mean, this thing is cool. I want that fat bluegill on that bed to get mad at this thing. God, he's big. That might be a red ear on that bed. Yeah, that is a red ear, and he's big. I can't believe he's not mad enough at this thing to bite it. I don't know if you can see this thing, but it has just an awesome slithery little swim. And sometimes it'll turn around on itself, sometimes it'll roll on its side a little bit and float. It's cool. And I've only played with it a little bit, but it seems to get a ton of attention. There we go. Nice bluegill. That is a, what is that? Is that a copperhead? I do not see it anymore. Oh, that is a big bass right there. My God. He is really chasing some of these bait fish. Wow. I mean, he was just going nuts trying to get those things. I don't know if he's still in there or not. That's crazy. He was chasing fish that looked just like this. What's that? He's a little stronger. Yeah, it's a smallmouth. Yeah, he's not bad. Not a big one, but he's healthy. Ooh, there's that big bass. I don't know if you can see him. Yeah, he's nice. That would be a nice one. I'd love to get that one. A little smallmouth hopped out of my hands before I could get a good picture of him. He's all right. He was small, but nice and healthy. Group of deer up there. I haven't talked a lot about this rod, and it's really the main reason I'm out here today. But that's a good thing, because it feels and acts so much like what I'm used to that I forget it's a new rod. And that is exactly what I was hoping for. I just hoped it would be, you know, able to cast a lot smaller lure, but, you know, I wasn't expecting to find something that would replace my Trout 1 and be more useful in creeks as kind of a light setup instead of an ultra light. But this very well may be the rod for that. It handles these slightly bigger lures in a way that feels exactly like my glass fin does when paired with this rod. It's a really good combo. I'm really enjoying this, and it's so familiar and easy to use that I'm forgetting that I'm using a new thing I haven't really used yet. I'm really surprised how well it casts this little Geecrack swimmer, because it's a floating minnow. If you've ever spent much time flick casting with floating minnows and suspending minnows, you'll know that they are very setup dependent. I really think the dynamic brakes on this Calcutta are so much better for these suspending minnows and floating minnows, because even though they are perfectly in the weight spec for casting them, their body is a little big for their weight. So you wind up with something that has a little more wind resistance, and it doesn't fly quite as fast. And you would think that in that scenario, non-dynamic brakes would be the way to go, since it's since the speed of the spool determines the braking force. But it doesn't seem to be that way. Every time that I've had one, it's a little too wind resistant to cast well on my glass rod with the Silver Creek. I'll find that it casts significantly better on the Calcutta on a carbon rod. I don't know why that is, but it's been that way with pretty much all of them. And I have casted this one on that Trout 1 rod, and I've casted the Karashi on that Trout 1 rod, and I casted it on this last night. And this casts both this and the Karashi a lot better than the Trout 1 does with this reel. And that works out really well for what I want, because I want to be able to flick cast these lures into these little holes. I do wish in this area I had a slow sinking version of this. I don't think the current's too strong to prohibit any bass, because it's quite a bit warmer than it has been. Look at that. There's a whopper plopper stuck to the bridge. I want that thing. I think it's a 95. There we go. Not a whopper plopper, it's a Berkeley Chopo. I'm gonna throw that in my bag. That's pretty cool. Look at that, it still closes. Yeah, that was a cool find. I'll have to weigh that when I get back. That might be a really good size for my heavier Finesse setup. Looks like it slows down a lot up there. Maybe it's a little deeper. Ooh, yeah, that's a nice bass. He didn't feel that good at first, or maybe he bit the fish that had this. Man, I don't know. He is nice though. I don't want to. Ooh, stay out of that tree, man. Stay out of that tree. Yeah, he's a good fish. Yeah, I wish I had a net right now. That is a good fish. God, that's a big head. Come on, buddy, come upstream. Yeah, I need to pull him into a little slower water. I think down here will be good. Get him in some shallow water. I can't go swimming off. God, that is a chunk of a fish, man. I wish I had a scale with me, because he's not the biggest one I've ever caught, but he is heavy. This is a very healthy bass for not a really big creek at all. I mean, there are some deeper holes in this creek, but this is a very respectable bass for a body of water like this. Look at this fish, man. That is a big, healthy bass. That was pretty cool. It's not the biggest bass I've ever caught, but it's probably the biggest one I've ever caught in a creek. That was a respectable bass, no matter what body of water it comes from. I'm gonna keep throwing this little swimmer, but I'm gonna make my way back upstream. I never really intended to come out and go this far. I kind of just wanted to throw this rod around, throw a couple of these newer lures around, and see how it does. This thing did great. That was the best test I could have done. I mean, you're probably not gonna catch many bass bigger than that in creeks, so that's really, you know, that's probably one of the biggest fish this rod's ever going to catch. And it handled it well. I mean, I was a little nervous about the main line. This is 13-pound Varivas braid. And just like the other Varivas stuff I use, when they say 13-pound, it doesn't break at 20 pounds. It breaks at 13 pounds, you know, give or take. So you got to be careful. I mean, I did crank the drag down. I did thumb the spool a little, because I just had to. That fish was just too heavy and too strong. Even going upstream, I couldn't do anything about it. I just kind of had to hope I could turn him before he went into something that was going to hang me. Luckily, I've got a heavier leader. I was running a 7-pound leader on this setup when I had it, you know, when I had it on the Trout 1 rod. I recently switched to an 11.5-pound leader. It doesn't seem to cast any worse, and I much prefer a heavier leader in water like this. I mean, the whole thing's rocks, and you get a big fish like that, he's gonna pull you into stuff. He's gonna go around one of those rocks, he's gonna go around a limb sometimes, and you want a leader that can take some abuse. I want a leader that's stronger than my main line, because the goal is not to have the leader break first. The goal is to have a leader that it can endure enough abuse to get me through a day of fishing and still be as strong as my main line. Now I know that 13 pounds is heavier than 11, but I never see it break on the leader side unless the leader is significantly lighter than your main line. So I'm confident that this leader could take a lot of abuse and still be stronger than that braid. Almost got hit again. Long here. Came halfway out of the water. His whole back out of the water right there at the end. God, I am still just buzzing. That very well may be one of the biggest fish I'm gonna catch in a creek all year. I know it wasn't the biggest one I've caught, so I didn't care to keep him out of the water any longer to measure him. I did set him next to the rod to take a couple pictures, and I can measure based off that and at least give you a rough idea. Well, this thing really casts like a dream. On my tippy toes in here trying to keep my phone dry. This is just the right depth of water to be very annoying. It's not so deep that you can't walk through it, but it's just deep enough that if you don't hold your phone up a little bit, you're gonna put it in the water. Now I'm finally using a combo with the more traditional style mountain stream rod handle, so I can make my rod a matching bracelet for a hook keeper. If you go down the most niche of the rabbit holes with mountain stream fishing, you'll see guys with little beaded tiny bracelets on their rods, and I think they're so cool. I got one now. How fun. These are always the most dangerous spots. They are so slick. It's just stripped right down to the rock and polished and covered in algae. It's slicker than ice. It is the hardest stuff to walk on. All right, we're back at the truck. It's loud because we're under this bridge. But this was a really cool little trip. I didn't really plan on coming out. I just had about an hour to get out here and mess around. I've probably been out here longer than that, but that's okay. This setup did awesome. It flick casted those lures so effortlessly. One thing that I noticed about it is I didn't have to put as much motion into it. I could do a tighter flick and it would still cast very, very well. It paired very, very well with the Calcutta. And I do have the avail spool and the narrow level wind in it. I think it would be fine with the factory spool. I'm not gonna switch it out because this is really annoying to switch out, and I'm probably not gonna have this reel on here forever. I've got some other ideas for this rod, but for right now, this is a really good combo, I think, especially for what I'm doing out here. This is it's a little heavier than what I was using, and it can handle a little bigger fish, and it casts those little heavier lures a little better, and it handles casting these less aerodynamic, lighter for their size at least, lures better. This is a very tricky one. This, a Karashi, Great Hunting X80, GH70. They're tricky to cast on my typical creek rod, just because of the setup that I'm running. They do better with a more solid lure, but it casts very, very well on a setup like this, and in water like this where I know there's bigger bass and deeper pockets. I want to cast things that are more of a like suspending type minnow, and this is going to be a really good setup for that. I think I may shorten the handle. You know, I like having my grip really short so I don't impede any movement, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I mean, this is a really, really good looking rod. I'm not going to promote this in any way. I think it's a great rod. It comes from Dankung. I don't know how you pronounce it. They're a company that sells pretty decent products for what it is. For something out of China, this is a very, very well made rod, and I have the glass fin rod that they sell too. That's the blank that I use to build my creek rod on, and it is a very, very good rod too. I don't have any complaints about these rods. I think it's an awesome rod. My gripe with it, and the reason I say I'm not promoting this, and I'm not telling you to shop with them, is because they're not honest with their ratings, and maybe their ratings aren't coming from them. Maybe their ratings are coming from the factory that actually makes this rod and the glass fin. But I bought this rod specifically because in the title it says 1/32 ounce. Like, it is marketed to cast 1/32 ounce, and they show people flick casting with this thing. They are leading you to believe that this thing can flick cast a 32nd of an ounce. I don't believe that. I never believed it then. I was hoping that it could at least do 1.5 grams. That's a little over double what they say it can do. That shouldn't be a problem at all, even if they are overrating it a little. But it failed spectacularly. Not only can you not cast 1.5 grams, you can't flick cast 2 grams, 2.5 grams. This will not flick cast as light of a weight as my glass fin does. And I've talked to Dankung. I sent them some emails, and they assured me that this rod will cast a lot lighter weight than the glass fin. That was an outright lie. That's dishonest. It's false advertisement. It's a shameful thing to do, especially with a product that you can't go and put your hands on and try out. You're relying on them to give you accurate information, and they're not doing that at all. That being said, it's a great rod. So with that being said, that is the reason why I'm not trying to promote this in any way. I'm not telling you to shop with Dankung. That's a weird area to me. I don't think people should support companies that lie. Maybe they didn't know. They very well probably didn't. But still, that's it. It comes down to either an outright lie or just ignorance of their own product, neither of which are acceptable. So I'm gonna keep this rod. It's a really good rod for stuff like this. It wasn't what I was expecting, and if you see this product and you are also looking for something that can cast that lower weight, just ignore it. It is nowhere even close to what you're looking for, but it is a very well-made rod. It did awesome today. It handled one of the biggest fish I'm probably going to catch this year, like a champ, and I'm going to keep using it. With that being said, it is getting late, and sun's getting lower, and I am going to get out of here.